welcome to the first ACER Roundtable held through Zoom in these times. And we've chosen a provocative topic of mid-career faculty, challenges and opportunities. Joining me on this panel, I'm Puneet Bhargava from University of Washington. Joining me on this panel is my colleague Jessica Robbins from University of Wisconsin. Jessica is a very active member in ACER and will be your president following Kate Klein. Dave Naeger is vice chair and director of radiology at Denver General. And he has a fascinating story and philosophy about mid-career issues that I have heard about and he would share later on. Dr. Pamela Schaefer is from Mass General. She is vice chair of postgraduate education and fellowship training at Mass General Hospital. And she also has a fascinating story and lots to learn from. So we're hoping that this will be a very engaging discussion. As first order of business, since we now have 30 participants, there's not enough time for everybody to go through introductions, but if you have any burning questions that you'd like the panel to address, would you please type them out in the chat box? And as we go through this session, we will try to address them as much as possible. This session is being recorded, so let's not get too many identifiers in our discussion. We can talk in generic terms. I know, having discussed this topic with a few people around, the challenges faced by clinician educators and, you know, for those of us as research scientists mid-career are very similar. So with that, the agenda of how we're going to run this next hour is going to be that, you know, people will put in their questions as soon as possible so that the panelists get a chance to look at them. Dr. Robbins will start with highlighting some of the highlights from a needs assessment survey that she, Dr. Catanzano, who I see as an attendee, did recently. And then we're going to move on into the 5 questions that you saw as part of the email notification that went out. Those 5 questions are not set in stone. We're going to try to tell some stories, some highlights, some lessons we can learn from the discussions that we have had. And so we'll use those as pivot points. And then if people have any ideas or suggestions or questions, please continue to type them out in the chat box. And at the end, if we have time, we might have some time for comments from the attendees. So with that, I turn it over to Dr. Robbins.
Great. All right. Well, thanks all for coming here today. So I don't have the answer to this first question and what does mid-career mean? I think that really is sort of something that each of us has to answer for ourselves. And for me personally, mid-career means that I've attained my first promotion and I'm sort of in that middle ground between being an assistant professor and a full professor. And so how do I really create my career success in this middle ground here? And why do we care? We care because, especially in my role as vice chair of faculty development, I want all of the faculty in my department to be achieving to their optimal potential. And I want everyone to feel supported, and I want everyone to really still feel like they have something to strive for, even though they've attained their first promotion. So myself and Puneet and Tara sort of asked this question: are we sort of over supporting our junior faculty and neglecting career planning for the mid and senior rank faculty members in our academic radiology department? So we sent a survey to AUR members, and just a brief summary of what we heard from 166 of these members. Here I have kind of a summary of what the response rate was, and about 2/3 of our respondents were kind of in the mid to late career. And from our respondents, we see that early in the career, these blue lines, people have access to a lot of faculty development programming. But when we get into the mid and late career stages, we see that there is fewer access, people have access to fewer faculty development programs, and it's this mid or the orange bar that reports having the least access to faculty development programming in the middle of their career. So it seems that we may not have as many opportunities for people in the middle stage of their career to have formal faculty development programming. We asked what the barriers to participation were, and the top responses were not enough time, shocking. That there was a lack of awareness or a lack of mentorship with respect to the importance of pursuing dedicated programming in the mid-career level. We have lots of clinical demands, and probably if we ask this question today, we might see that clinical demands section was an even greater barrier than before. We see that people feel that there's a lack of support from their leadership, there's a lack of programming dedicated towards mid-career faculty, and there's a lack of money to participate in those programming opportunities. The top gains that people reported from participating in programming for faculty development were networking, a new sense of confidence, increased insights and motivation to pursue additional career opportunities, and insight into the promotion process. So with that, I think with that summary here, I think we can maybe start our discussion as a group here. So I don't know, I'll pass the baton back to Puneet to sort of moderate the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. I think the needs survey clearly showed that this is an area there that we need to pay more attention to as academic radiologists overall. I can tell you that when I look around in my department, I actually see right now more mid-career faculty than actually young assistant professors, and that is not unusual in many departments. So I want to kick this off by saying, okay, so we define mid-career, right? So somebody who may have had their first promotion, may already be a full professor, a young full professor, and they've done what they've done very well for the 10 or so career, and they feel kind of, and I use the word stuck. Stuck meaning they're doing things really well, but these things are no longer super exciting. They feel maybe less challenged. They want to take on more opportunities. Maybe some of these opportunities are not available locally. Maybe there are other people who are doing those opportunities and they don't want to give those up. And so you look down inside and say, okay, what should I do to reinvent myself, right? Do I stay? Do I kind of do these things while these are somebody's assignments? Do I still work on these things and maybe risk stepping on somebody's toes? Do I just do them anyway? Do I take my energy nationally and do those same things, maybe not in the department, but maybe nationally? Or do I really cut the cord and find a new department that might give me those opportunities to make me more fulfilled? And so one of the questions was, what's Dave Naeger's intriguing story? So I bring that up, David, because you taught me a wonderful word that I actually Googled, and I encourage everybody who's on this call to Google. And that word is called mid-career malaise. It is a real thing. People feel that mid-career. And so why don't we kick off, David, with sort of, what you felt, how long you felt it, and what you kind of did to maybe feel happier and more fulfilled.
I feel like I need a therapist chair here. Like horizontal while I was describing. Yeah, it's true. I think in medicine, I can describe the feelings. So maybe it'll kick this off for people. In medicine, we go through all these phases, right? So we get multiple degrees, and we go through training and different levels of training, residency, internship, fellowship, et cetera. And then when you start as a faculty, it's a whole separate set of expectations, right? So when you start, it's hard. You have to manage the clinical side of actually being an attending instead of a trainee. In academics, you start learning the sort of scholarship that's expected of you, actually writing papers, working on talks. On the education side, some of us do more or less, but you have to put together, again, presentations, learn how to do a good job. get better at whatever group it is you're teaching, students, residents, practicing physicians, multiple. And it's all very challenging, like every stage of our career. It's very challenging and it lasts a couple of years. But the difference is once you had a career, there's no graduation, right? So you start mastering this. I don't, you never master it, but you get better. And you start doing the same thing and same thing. And then at some point, you just sort of feel that the number of new challenges decreases. I have now lectured and taught. I am doing as well as I'm doing it. I now do my clinical work. I have now done it for years and I feel more comfortable. I have now published or given national talks. Now I've done it many times. Now I feel comfortable. But then you don't have a challenge. And it's the first time in the career you don't have that. And that gave me a sense of this malaise. And it was sort of a career version, I think, of a midlife crisis. We're sort of, well, what is the next challenge? What I'm going to work on? What am I going to try to master now? So for me, I did feel that. I spent a huge amount of effort on the education side, speaking and then publishing in education. But I really wanted to, have new challenges. So actually, I spent almost all of my career at UCSF, but I came here to Colorado 2 years ago. And it was part to get more operational experience. So I now run a small department, and it was an operational experience I didn't have. And that has brought new challenges. I now don't feel the malaise, but it required a pretty dramatic change. So I think, what we have to do will change by person. I think that's what we can talk about, but that was the malaise.
Okay, that's a very good start to this discussion. And Pam, like coming over to you, I think, clearly there might be a point where, some of us feel the desire to pivot, right? We want to do something else. We want to do new things. We want to be challenged. We're at this point in our career where we have the experience, and maybe other people looking at us from outside see us as very successful educators or very successful researchers, but deep inside we get this feeling where we're not being challenged. We want new and more opportunities. So what are your thoughts on how can faculty pivot successfully?
I'm muted. I am so sorry. Now I'm not muted. Here are the challenges, and different things cause malaise for different people. So you're involved in a lot of activities. 10 years out, I was involved in, program directors at ASNR, and I was running New England Rank and Ray, and I was involved in a few other scientific programs and an editor from AJNR, but I was kind of just doing these things. I was getting overextended. I just kept saying yes to everything. And then I was overextended, but I wasn't really completely, leading anything at Mass General. I had some mid-career leadership roles. And so that was going on, and I liked education. At Harvard, you cannot get promoted until recently along the educational track. So I couldn't really figure out what was I going to get promoted on, stroke, scholarship, or education. I was doing a lot with a lot of different societies, but I wasn't really advancing in the leadership. I felt like I was, one of my mentors had been giving me all these opportunities, and they got cut off because then they felt like there was competition. Me and my wife daughter was getting to be, an age where she needed more attention. So like all these things are going on. It was creating anxiety. Should I stay? Should I leave? So what I thought was, you have to think strategically. What do you really want? What is it you really want? You're doing all these little different things, but maybe you just have to focus on what you really want. So one thing I wanted was, I was completely overextended. So I wanted more time. So I asked the division, I asked for more time. I was senior editor of AJNR. I was running the program director. As program director, I needed more time. So I ended up getting another half day. I looked at where I could, I looked at our education vice chair, our division head in neuroradiology. I was not going to get anywhere staying at Mass General. The thing is, it's hard for me to move because my husband's here. So my thoughts were, I'm just going to get more involved in societies. And I would really like to, I love ASNR. I want to get promoted. I want to go up in ASNR. So I started working on really my connections there, and eventually became president. I was focusing on that. You know, same thing still going on at Mass General. I've got my stuff, not really moving up, got involved in AUR, you know, ACER, GME, ABR. I've done all sorts of different things. So I just started getting more involved in societies. And then, you know, I decided that, you know, what else could I do? Well, I started interviewing elsewhere. I think that that's a really good thing to do. It helps you kind of, you know, you go elsewhere, you see what other people have. It helps you decide, you know, do you want to move? Do you want to stay? Are there better offers? Do other institutions have goals that are more aligned with yours? You know, so I think that's a really important thing, and it gives you some leverage with your chair. I could go on and on, but that's my first answer.
So that's great. I think at this point it's fairly obvious that these mid-career challenges are not challenges based out of like lack of success. They're actually more of the more successful you are, the more challenging these times can be, because you've gotten a lot done and you want to get a lot done, but you just don't want to do more of the same, if I'm reading this theme right. So Jessica, what has been your experience in any from your network and in your department? Like, how are you helping navigate, you know, mid-career faculty? One of the things that has been striking to me looking at University of Wisconsin from the outside is that you guys have hardly any turnover, and the department has been very successful at finding mid-career people like engaging roles. How do you do that? What's the secret sauce?
Secret sauce, I don't know. I mean, I think it's a nurturing department, and it's a very collaborative department. So I think that that's super helpful, that there are mentors at all levels and sponsors at all levels. We also have a very creative department chair who's willing to consider new leadership opportunities. And that's sort of how I found myself where I am in my mid-career stage. And I kind of made a career pivot a few years ago, where much of my starting in residency, I always envisioned myself becoming a program director, and I had been associate program director since the day I started on faculty. And we had a new position open up in our department for faculty development. So I started thinking outside of the box, and maybe this might be an opportunity for me to sort of flex some new muscles and try my hand at leadership in a new realm, and kind of learn some new things about myself and some new things about leadership in the department. So I think that it's really helpful to have creative leadership, to think creatively about the things that interest you, and how might you take the things that interest you and use that to propel your career forward. And if, you know, opportunities don't exist at this moment, it doesn't mean that they might not exist moving forward. So, you know, kind of being bold and having a conversation with leadership in your department. Hey, I have this idea to do this thing. Can I be the one to lead that effort? So I think that that is sometimes an opportunity that people might not realize, that just because something doesn't exist doesn't mean that it can't exist. So I think that's been something that's been helpful for me, and that I've seen be successful in our department.
So one thing that I've been putting in some reading on this topic and thinking about, like, how people who are not in medicine kind of, you know, sort of reinvent themselves, or, you know, get their business mojo going and whatnot. And one of the things that I learned was we think we do very well thinking in our head, but we actually don't, because our thoughts are very tangential. It's very difficult to align them. So one of the things that I learned was this habit of thinking on paper. So whether you doodle, whether you find a journal, whatever it is, you gotta get some random ideas that you have throughout the day on a journal. So I actually have different colored journals that I'm always surrounded by. Now, one journal is for daily activities, like things that I just have to do as part of my daily job. And I'm now starting to put a date on each page. So it becomes like I can go back in time and actually see what it is that I'm focusing on, and find out what are the things that I shouldn't be doing that I'm actually focusing on. And then a separate journal where I write about philosophical stuff. Like, for example, I recently started a page about, what should my ideal life look like? And I said, I'm going to write one thing a day on that page. So I have to really, really think hard about if God gave me this opportunity to design my ideal life, what it would look like. And people are now talking about in the business sphere that, think about what you want to what's your ideal life to look like, because it's different from everyone, and start to maybe achieve one of those goals slowly and slowly, so that you're moving from a life that you've been living and it's high speed versus trying to pivot to a life that you want. Does that relate to any of you guys? How are you trying to find out what it is that you want, and what is it that makes you happy, and trying to make it more from an abstract to more concrete, actionable life?
Yeah, I think that what happens in the beginning of your career, you start, you take on all these opportunities. I personally didn't even think about what I wanted. And then I'm 10 years in and I was like, wow, I don't really know what I want. And so I think it is literally like writing down all the things you're doing, writing the things you want, and then figuring out what you want, and then trying to, figure out how you're going to get there. But I think it's good to read different things outside of medicine, that can help you with some of your decision making. I read The Ride of a Lifetime by Bob Iger, Lean In, Sheryl Sandberg, Give and Take, about people who are givers and takers or traders in their negotiations and how well they do in life. The givers do the best, but they get exhausted. So I think it's good to just read these different, books. And then it's great to read Negotiating, Leadership, all those things, conflict management, feedback, speaking up, all those things. Because if you want leadership positions, you need to have the skills in place, and you need to have some credibility in your department or in your, whatever activities you have, that you have these skills.
Yeah, I would say it is helpful to have a sense of what you're looking for. When you hit the malaise, you want to think, what is not fulfilling about what I'm doing now that I'm doing it the 80th time? And what is it you're looking for? And it's not so much like the position or a location or anything like that. Often the answer is a challenge or something different than what I was doing before. And once you know what you're looking for, then you can be open to when that shows up. And it might not take the form that you think. There are positions or opportunities in your department. There might be ones in institutions nearby. It might be a job somewhere else. But you can't know it when you see it if you don't know what it is, what you're looking for. And for me, it wasn't specifically this role or a city. It was a specific type of growth opportunity or challenge. But yeah, what you're ultimately going for is a mixture of what you're looking for and what actually comes to you and is available. The only other thing I'd throw in at this point is one of our typed questions is, how do you start going that direction, especially if you were basically entirely clinical? And we heard some good answers, right? Read books. One of the suggestions was go to society meetings and interact with others. But the other step that I would say now that I am in a leadership position is you need to start working in that direction. Pam just talked about credibility. You can't start from zero and then ask your chair or leader for something in that room when you've done. So you have to start making some progress. And you can do small baby steps and get there.
Jessica, any thoughts?
Oh, I think there are a ton of great thoughts here. And I think this is where mentorship, continual mentorship kind of comes in too. And, reading is super helpful and soul searching is really helpful, but talking to lots of people from lots of places and people from different departments and people that aren't radiologists and maybe people that aren't even in medicine, having conversations with a diversity of people can helped me clarify some of my goals and how I might get to those places.
Yeah, so, two thoughts and then we'll move on to the next slide. I think, as David said, he was clearly looking for more administrative challenges, but that doesn't always to be the case. As my career has gone on, I've certainly thought about, more informal leadership roles can be as fulfilling as the roles that actually come with titles. So one of the philosophy that people talk about is that, actually there's a tweet this week that I saw where, people follow leaders, but they actually report to supervisors. So you have to think about whether it is the supervisory high that you are after, or you truly want to be a leader. I think the titles sometimes come with a lot of different opportunities that one may not enjoy. The second thing that I've personally found useful is having quite a few mentors and being communications, communicating your feelings with people who've done this a lot longer than you. And I have to give a shout out to the more aggressive, sort of honest, brutally honest mentors, because they just say things as they are. So they might like just hold you and say, hey, Puneet, you are not doing well. These are the 3 things you need to do. I told you that you need to do them last year. You keep coming to me and you're not doing them. Come on, get your act together, right? So sometimes just having a brutally honest and a very direct, with a specific type of mentor can be really useful. At least I found that useful. All right, let's move to slide number 2, which is our next theme of discussing this. So we've talked about mentors, but how do you find support for making this career pivot? How do you actually go about doing this without bringing out the nuclear option, which is, I'm just gonna pick up my bags and leave? Because I think for those of us who have kids going to school, maybe spouses who have, very nice jobs that they like and are not necessarily exciting with the idea of, picking up and moving to a place that we haven't really even thought about just because the opportunities exist in a workplace. Maybe start with Pam this time. Pam, like, how did you have those conversations locally in a very safe, supportive manner? Because I'm sure like people are like, oh, why are you talking like this? Are you looking to leave? Are you looking to have a retention package conversation with your chair? Like it's a very delicate line you're walking at that point.
Right. It is always hard. So I think that you have to have mentors outside. Like I'm a neuroradiologist. I have mentors all over the department who, probably half a dozen who I can go to with anything. I trust they're not going to tell anybody else. When it's confidential, it's confidential. As you said, people are brutally honest, and I ask them to be brutally honest, and that's a good thing. And sometimes it's hurtful, but it ultimately is the best. And then, I'm involved in a lot of societies, and I have a lot of mentors around the country. And I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've like texted with some good friends, and it's like, I need advice. Or they, I listened to somebody's presentation for a leadership position, on a Sunday morning. We were like sharing the, to help people, like to support that person, but also just advice. So I would say mentors outside in your own department, outside your specialty, mentors across the country at different institutions who are going to keep things private, and you want, you know, mentors who are above you, mentors who are your age, sometimes people younger than you who you train, who you know, or you trained or whatever. They, you know, ultimately they get a little bit older. That'll tell you like things you could do. I think that having other mentors in the hospital outside of radiology, be as connected as you possibly can. But you know, you have to have those people you really trust. And then I think the other thing is, I tell all the younger people in our department, go make an appointment with the chair at least once a year. You know, like you talk about your faculty, your, you know, career evaluation every year, but it's usually with your division head or whatever. Make an appointment, go talk to the chair. Start asking the chair, you know, think about 5 years from now. Start asking the chair what opportunities are here. Tell him or her what you're interested in. Make yourself known in your department and, you know, what you want. So maybe in mid-career, you're talking to your chair, you know, I want to be vice chair for education in 10 years. How do I get there? You know, do I have an opportunity here? Who are you connected with around the country? You know, let the chair know what you're interested in, you know, so figure out what you're going to focus on and then start talking about it. And then, you know, if you've been talking and having conversations and the chair said, well, you know, maybe you need to take this leadership course, go take the leadership course. You're doing the thing the chair asks you, you know, so if a position opens up, they'll ask you if there's a similar position or a new idea they have or you have, it'll ultimately help you advance.
I think the thing I would add,
Thank you, Pam. Yeah.
You know, because you're talking about avoiding the nuclear option, right? Upsetting people. How do you have these conversations? You're not going to be able to do anything unless there's an opening or a position or a need, a gap, right? So you're not going to any leader or any new job or anything where you say, this is what I want. This is all about me. Give me what I want, right? It's a mixture of what you need for your career growth and what the institution, the department, the leader, another institution, it's what somebody else needs. And even if that is, they want a very happy XYZ imager and you need something else, be it part-time work or this kind of challenge or whatever to be happy, then that's something, you know, that's meeting their needs, which is they want a happy imager who wants to be there, but then that person needs this. So it doesn't need to be a secret, is my point. You should be going to leaders saying, I'm looking for something that helps me, but that also helps you or helps the institution. Yeah, so I think using that as a conversation, both with your mentors, but also leaders, it doesn't have to be a contentious or a secret thing, really.
Jessica?
And yeah, I think I'm not sure that I'm going to totally answer any one specific question, but I think that some of my thoughts might tie a bunch of things together, including the question that Omer put up with respect to creativity and formal titles. And so I think, you know, I'll really reiterate this sort of like multi-modality, multi-specialty mentor system of really talking to people and having those mentors really help you flesh out what it is that you want for yourself, how you are going to optimize your performance. And then to Dave's point, I think some of this comes down to sort of selling yourself and kind of gaining buy-in and setting the stage. It's almost like you're writing a paper, right? You have to like come up with a compelling introductory paragraph. Like, why is this important? Why this thing that's important to me, like, why should it also be important to you? And how can I make it more of a this is good for all sort of thing? And I think that's where this creative leadership comes in as well, even within the confines of formal titles. You know, when you can take a creative idea and figure out how you're going to get buy-in from your department, you can tie your creative ideas into a formal leadership position. You can tie your creative ideas into perhaps the goals and aims of the department. So I think that there are lots of ways to approach different things, including career development, leadership opportunities, and sort of taking some pages out of business school courses, you know, like really having some marketing, some self-marketing, and figuring out how you can really make it work for everyone, you know, self-serving as well as serving the department and the community in which you're working. I think sometimes we can have a lot more than we think we can have when we just look at the straight lines and the boxes that are already formed.
Yes, so to summarize, you know, it's things, you know, there's two things that are said, you know, and one thing that I've heard over is that many chairs and other leaders give positions to people who are already doing the job. So you need to have some record and credibility of doing something, having done something similar, maybe locally within, you know, the state ACER chapter, or maybe in some national organization, and saying, look, I'm already doing this at a high level. It's only a matter of bringing this locally. I know that I've talked to some people where in their departments, the only thing that's supported is time, and there's no extra money in this. In some departments, there's time and money in this. The question about formal versus informal titles and how it relates to creativity from Omar, I think the thing that I would like to say is that as soon as you assume a formal title, then that job will demand a few action items that are actually not creative, and there actually comes with a lot of work. And once people realize that they've given you some time, you will be asked to participate in some committees, which will use up a fair amount of that time as an expectation. So you were looking to do something creative, you were very happy you got some time, and then a few months later you found out that all that time is taken by these other committees that are sort of tangentially connected, and now you're stretched as much as you were before. So that's the challenge with a formal title. I think the other thing that's helped me personally is to focus on, you know, keeping sort of a happiness log, whether in your head or on a piece of paper, like what makes me happy. So right now I'm in a, you know, AUR ACER group, and working on things like this with my ACER AUR larger community makes me very happy. So obviously I should do more of that, right? So just keeping a log of you know, what makes you happy, what makes you more fulfilled, and that's certainly the path forward. So with that, let's move on to the third question we've designed. So so there's one thing to, you know, think about what is it that I really want, and it's a separate thing to actually make that change. And when you make these changes, some of these changes, for these changes to actually click, some changes have to be at work and some changes have to be at home. And how does one go about doing that is a question for the panel. David, maybe start with you.
I guess more of a transition point, just because it was made at the end of the last one. Which is, I wanted to highlight Puneet's comment before, that the goal here as mid-career is not necessarily advancing in the traditional way. It's not like your goal is your mid-career and you must get vice chair, and then the goal from vice chair is chair, and the point from chair is dean, and you're trying to be president of the world. That's not actually what will make many people happy. You know, the administrative path actually, as you just said, has lots of meetings and demands and requirements. And perhaps more generically, we're also not going for titles. I have plenty of examples of titles or leadership things that were not of particular interest to me, and it does not make you happy. You know, an extra line in your CV, I guess, makes your CV better, but it's not what we're going for, and it doesn't solve the malaise here. So there's never titles, and it's not the traditional path, unless the traditional path is actually what you want. You know, the goal here is to find what it is that actually challenges you and interests you. And if it has a formal title and it totally fits what you want, go for it. But if it doesn't, you don't need to search for the title. And you certainly don't want to be shoehorned into a title, then doing a bunch of stuff that's not actually what you're interested in. I actually don't, I'm going to pass the baton for this question. I don't have tons of answers here. I found myself working very hard as a junior faculty, and I find myself working very hard during this malaise part 2 to find something different. I enjoy that challenge, and I don't mind that pace of work. It hasn't actually changed. So maybe somebody else can answer that one better.
Pam?
So I was saying at the beginning, I just got involved in all these things. My daughter, I have a daughter who was, 10 years in, who was like 5 years old. I felt I was stretched so thin. So I thought I had to focus a little bit more. And so I did get more time because I asked for time. I said I'm going to have non-negotiable time for my daughter, Sarah. So that meant like from when I got home at night till she went to bed, it didn't matter what was going on the next day. That was going to be her time. The weekend was going to be her time, and time with my husband too. So I made that very clear. So that was a good thing for me because it really wasn't bleeding into my home life. Stuff was bleeding into my sleep, but it was not, so I thought that was a good thing. I stopped saying yes to everything. I was a senior editor of AJNR, so I'd stopped, I reviewed for a few other journals, but not a ton. I decided I became less involved in some societies that I like. I just didn't have time to be involved in them. I didn't want to travel constantly. I started delegating some activities. I was, the fellowship program director. I have an associate program director to help you out. Just stopped lecturing to medical students because I was doing a lot of other teaching. So the first thing I did was just kind of control my environment and, give myself more time. And I decided I was really going to focus on stroke and education. And those were the two big things I was going to focus on. So I think just kind of deciding what you want and controlling your time, because you're the only one who's going to control your time. So I found that helpful.
Jessica?
Yeah, I think that Pam makes some great points with sort of identifying the things that are important to you, and Dave does as well. And so when I advise faculty, mostly junior faculty, but it's applicable to all. And I think that when we are feeling in a place that we don't love, I think it's important to take stock of the activities that you're doing. And I have 3 buckets that I think of, like things that I have to be doing, like to be a good community participant or a good departmental member. So there's like things that you just have to do. And then there are things that I absolutely love to do. And then there are things that I need to do for promotion. So, or for career development. So I think that it's helpful to kind of organize your activities into those 3 buckets and then figure out which of your activities maybe don't even fit into any of those buckets. And you just like said yes to it at some point, but it doesn't help your local community. It doesn't help your well-being, and it doesn't help your career advancement. And so those are easy things to say no to or to take off of your plate. And I think that sometimes it can be hard to say no or to let go of opportunities. You feel like you might be letting people down. But one of the things as you advance in your career, one of the great things that you get to start doing is giving those opportunities to people behind you, and start sponsoring people that are behind you and giving them opportunities that might spark their interest or might put them in a position that gives them an opportunity to make a mark on their career. So I think it's helpful to think about to switch the perspective a little bit when you're taking things off of your own plate, and instead of saying, well, I'm giving this up or quitting this thing, I am giving this opportunity to the person who is hired 10 years behind me, so that they can then begin to make a mark on their career as well.
I love that comment about the buckets, and one of them being promotion. It is actually a place where I see people make errors pretty frequently, which is if being promoted, if being in an academic environment is part of your career, you do have to do that, right? And you have to find out what that requires. And for example, publication is often needed. And some people might say they don't like to do publication. Well, if you're on the promotion path that needs it, you need to do it. The other thing, as Puneet said earlier, is you also have a supervisor and you might have specific roles, and that is just expected. So you can never forget what are externally forced requirements for promotion or doing your job that you were hired to do. So you're trying to mesh those together. And if you hate doing what you have to do, then maybe you're in the wrong job, or you're in the wrong promotion track, or you need to be doing something different. But you can never forget those needs.
I guess the other thing I would say about the promotion is that I never realized until I was a professor, because I hated dealing with it, how important, you get so many more opportunities, you know, from the medical school and from your chair, just because you got promoted. It doesn't necessarily even mean you have better skills, but all these opportunities open up. So like in our department, if you're going to be a division head or, you know, a service chief or what, you know, you have to kind of be at the associate professor level. And so I try to mentor younger people and tell them, like, just, you know, work on this, because even though it's not your favorite bucket, it will open up other opportunities that you may want later on.
Yes, and I think, you know, as messed up as the system of promotion is, and where there's no clear guidelines sometimes, and sometimes, you know, it takes a lot more to get promoted at a certain institution and a lot less in the certain institution, but the title is the same, is that I can't tell you the day I got my promotions out of the way, how liberating that was. That I felt like you know, I felt like a performer who's no longer performing to be judged, but is performing for the love of the art that I'm pursuing, you know, sort of in that way. So I would encourage anyone and everyone, if at all possible, get your promotions done early so that you can focus on what matters to you. And you can always find a way of writing what it is that you're doing. And so that's the first thing. The second thing that I've actually seen a few people do, and it's something that I aspire to do, hopefully, and not into the future, is that people are actually a lot of time learning about personal finance. And you might say, well, that's so disconnected from this topic. Well, actually, it's not. So imagine if you had, you were financially secure, you were financially independent, you really didn't need a fat paycheck, you were not in debt, you could get time a lot sooner in your life and actually fund the time that you would like to pursue your passions and do on your dime, rather than look for opportunity for somebody else to give you time to do what it is that you want to do. And I've actually met some radiologists. I'll tell you, an interventional radiologist in the Midwest I met at a meeting where she was older, she was a grandmother wanting to spend more time with her kids, and she went to care and she said, I don't want to take call anymore. I'm happy to cut that, and I love for that money that I to be distributed to, you know, my colleagues. So the colleagues were very happy that they got a pay raise. They would have to take a little bit extra call on the weekends, and she was happy that she got more time. So I think people are pursuing that. We have a couple of questions. One of the questions is that it's hard to be part of societies and communities because it's the same people everywhere. What are your recommendations to get involved in different societies? Well, I have one really easy one. Email the chair of the committee that you want to be a part of or need an opportunity in, and sign up to do something. I can tell you that invariably, if somebody emails the committee chair, they end up on the committee. And if you do something that nobody else wants to do, that's like a fast track to getting another opportunity. There's another question from Srini, is that should societies have real term limits, not for specific roles, but for individuals? On the one hand, people have spent enough time in a society, have institutional memory investment, but they do hog the opportunities to some extent. It's true. Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't set the rules though. Any thoughts before we move on to the next one?
I think some societies have term limits and things turn over, and some don't, and you don't really have control over it. But I think ask. You know, as you said, email the committee chair, anybody in your department, you know, even if they're not in your division, you don't know them well, ask, say you want to get involved in a society that, you know, the squeaky wheel gets greased. There are people who are happy to help you out, but they, you know, they don't know you need help. And so I would just say, be proactive and ask.
Absolutely,
Okay,
especially
let's
for
move
some
on.
of the society, like the committees and the societies, people are sometimes dying for committee members that are eager to actually participate and be active. So if you show that initiative to reach out to them, you're self-identifying as someone with initiative and who's proactive and who will get the work done.
Okay, let's move on to the next theme here. Any resources? We talked about a couple of books. So books on negotiation, give and take. You mentioned that, Pam. Anything else that people want to mention as a resource? I know that somebody mentioned Harvard Business Review articles are great because they're a quick read. Any other resources?
I would say get your chair to give you time to go to faculty development sessions and leadership courses and mentoring and sponsoring courses. You're part of faculty development, either at like AUR, RSNA, other societies, or at your own institution, because they're usually good opportunities. There's a leadership course at MGH that my chair put me in right in mid-career. And I went once a week for 2 years, and it was great. And I met people all over the hospital, and I learned the negotiating, the emotional intelligence, the feedback, the speaking up, all those things, you know, the skills that you want that you don't really know you need to have. Right? At the time, I didn't know I needed to have them. So I would say, you know, try to get time and money to take, you know, for some of these opportunities. And I always felt like, wow, I'm never going to get my paper written because I'm going to take this leadership course, but it's important.
Okay, so
I think those leadership courses give you so many skills that you didn't even know that you needed until you've started to gain some of those skills and you realize how impactful it can be to have a negotiation, you know, have negotiation skills. It helps with everyday conversations. It doesn't mean that you're looking to get a raise or to find a new contract. So I think that those skills show their value in unexpected ways.
Yeah, so I have a specific example in mind that I'd like to share. Like, for example, like I think a lot of us are not good at negotiation, and talking about more money when you're negotiating something can always be a challenge. And I heard this wonderful trick from actually the financial bloggers community. I actually attended one of their conferences on Zoom, and one of the speakers said that when she is negotiating with the client will say, okay, I'm going to pay you X dollars. She always, instead of saying, oh, that's too little, she says, is there some wiggle room, right? So that's a very soft, polite, and yet direct, and it's a question, so they have to answer it. Is there some wiggle room? And she said, just saying those words often gets her paid more. So if you're offered an opportunity and there's, you know, the money is maybe, you know, that less or maybe is too little, not up to your expectation, ask if there is some wiggle room. So one of the other questions was from Dr. Majid, the old timers should be coached and coaxed into more mentoring and guidance and relinquishing some roles to make sure that the mentees have openings and opportunities. Couldn't agree more. So last question that we have on the agenda, any negotiation tips? Anything that has worked well? I think this has been covered in several areas.
Yeah, I would.
Go ahead, Pam.
No, it's okay. You can go.
One of the things that helped me, I'm an introvert and haven't really until recently had a very loud voice in public settings. And so when I was negotiating for a new position, it was really hard for me to ask for things. So the mindset that I learned to adapt was, you know, kind of thinking about the things that were going to help me be successful in this role, as opposed to saying like, these are the things that I need. What are the things that are going to help me achieve the things that the department needs? So it made it a lot easier for me to think about the resources that I was negotiating for when it became less about me personally and more about the thing that I was trying to do.
Okay, should we, sorry, you had something to say, Pam?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think that's a great point when it's about patient care, or it's about education for the trainees, or it's about, as you said, being successful in your position, which is one of those things, or it's about improving the research. I think it's helpful, but I think it's also, people don't like to ask. I'm introverted too, and I hate to ask, but I would just say, have conversations with your chair, explore opportunities, but ask for, time, ask for additional training, ask for resources, ask for, the worst they can say is no. And as Jessica said, make the justification not about you. I think that's a good point.
And keep in mind when you have these conversations, it's not all about asking. And I'm not saying either the people are saying that, but it's something we have to remember when we ask for something. It's also what we're offering, right? Because you have to meet the needs of the person you're asking from. So you're both asking for what you need, which is incredibly important, but making sure you're providing something that somebody wants. And the other thing that really helps with your negotiations is to have produced thus far. So either being very good at what you're doing if it's something different, or very good in the realm you're asking for greater responsibility.
Okay, so at this point, I think any of the participants wants to say anything, please turn on your mics. We have only a few minutes left, and if 2 or 3 people could give like maybe short pearls that they have found very useful in their careers, that I think everybody else could learn from that. Don't be shy, we're all learning here.
So Puneet, you're asking the participants, right?
Yes, participants.
So it sounds like maybe people have to raise their hand to let us know that they'd like to speak.
Okay.
Or people can put comments into the chat box.
I see no hands, so I assume nobody wants to say. We're seeing some comments about excellent and good discussion and some thank yous. So I suppose people related with our message here, I think we're all struggling at different levels that with give or take the same issues. So hopefully this was useful. We hope to have more such roundtables. So if you really love this, please attend the future roundtables that we're going to put together. We'll restart this again in January, hopefully.
And thanks.
Thank you, Jessica, Pam, and David.